Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to declare the meeting open and welcome all those in attendance. The Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting is being live streamed and recorded in accordance with the City's live streaming and recording council meeting policy. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the City recording and live streaming their image and or voice. I'd now like to invite Deputy Mayor Barry Winmar to present the Welcome to Country.
He's not here.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Well, I would, from the chair, like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present. We have apologies from Mayor Feasey, Councillor Sargent and Councillor Winmar. So we do have a quorum with 50% of the committee in attendance. Do we have any questions from the public this evening?
No questions.
And any petitions, presentations and deputations?
Nil received.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest not already declared relating to this evening's agenda items? None indicated. We have the minutes of the previous meeting on the 9th of June. Do I have someone to move the minutes? Thank you, Councillor. And second the minutes? Thank you very much, Ben. Is there any discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If not, we'll take the minutes as accepted. All those in favour? Nil against. Thank you. Moving to 8.1, the Council Policy Review Update. Would management care to introduce this item?
Through the chair, we've done some significant work in this area in the time since the June meeting. We've taken 13 policies to council, which have been reviewed and updated since the June meeting. 3 policies have been revoked by the city, so that leaves only 3 policies which are overdue and in need of review, 2 of which are going to the November council meeting, which just leaves 1 in need of attention. The planning team are continuing with their schedule of review of the local planning policies, so no major concerns in that area. I just note there's just an incorrect title on the top of the attachment. That should be the nutrient retentive effluent disposal systems policy, but the comments are accurate that policy is likely to be revoked once there's some changes to the laws in that area.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions on this item? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Through the chair, just referencing obviously the significant effort that's gone in since the last Audit Risk Committee meeting. Just had a query. There's still a few policies that are sort of overdue. I think you referenced 3 in the paper, but I can see maybe a couple more than that in the supporting information. But is there any particular policies that are at risk of not being completed at the end of this calendar year?
Through the chair, no, none of significant concern. We're confident that they're tracking along well. The teams have been working really hard in this area to get on top of all the concerning policies. So there's no major concern from the city's end that we won't meet these sort of timeframes. As I said, great work has gone into this by the team, and we're pretty happy with where we're at. The biggest challenge going forward will just be making sure that the teams keep on top of these policies. So we've, I believe I mentioned at the last committee meeting, we've implemented a procedure where now our Attain software tracks these policies. So policy owners are automatically reminded when a due date's coming up. And so there's no longer sort of a guessing game for the policy owners to make sure that they're keeping on top of these things.
Yeah, thanks for the update. And as I sort of mentioned or discussed previously, having the opportunity to review policies that may not, sort of fit the purpose or intent is a great outcome. I suppose quite a sort of broad question, but during the policy reviews, has there been any consistent risks or any operational gaps been identified through these reviews?
Through the chair, none spring to mind. The issue when I started here at the city is just the significant breadth of policies. The biggest risk that I foresaw at that time was that you had these sort of set and forget historical policies that just didn't accurately reflect the operations of the city in any way, shape or form. So it's been a matter of sorting the wheat from the chaff and, getting rid of those policies and giving us a workable load of policies that actually reflect our practices here. So that's been the biggest issue in the last couple of years, focusing on that.
Great, cool. Thank you. No further questions.
I have a couple of questions. One is the advice going to the policy owner. Is there also an oversight through governance services that they are responded to in a timely manner?
Through the chair. So each policy on the policy document states the next review date. So that's a publicly accessible document that teams and the whole entire city and the district for that matter can see the review date. In terms of Attain software, I would need to take that question on notice so the policy owner certainly gets notified. Whether that goes up the line within the software, I'd have to take that question on notice.
Through the chair. The other thing which we do as well regarding policy, so at our senior management team meetings, Russell goes through the list of all the policies and the dates, and that list also goes to the executive leadership team so that we've got oversight on all that, so we can actually put a bit of guidance to people as to the time frames to complete.
So I suggest, given the oversight of this committee around governance matters, that we do have some sort of reporting through to this committee with respect to any policies that are updated, because not all of them would, would necessarily come here, I don't think, or would they all?
All the council policies do.
Okay. So we'll see all the council policies, and then if we could have some reporting around whether any are overdue for renewal, I think that would close the loop.
Yep.
Thank you. So that was the one question I had. Just a quick follow-up. Do we have a tight process now around the creation of new policies to ensure that we make a very conscious decision around whether something needs to be a policy or whether it can be handled in some other form?
Through the chair. So new policies would go through the city's exec team before going to council. So it passes through those forums of quality assured to make sure it's something the city actually needs. As I said, we've done some considerable work to make sure we cull the number of set and forget policies that are historical and no longer meet our operational needs. So new policies certainly have to jump through hoops to make sure that they're actually required, given the additional workload on the organisation.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the manager's recommendation that we note the city's progress towards the review of all outstanding council policies. So I'll move that from the chair. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, councillor. And all those in favour? And nil against. We should record that Councillor Winmar has joined us. Thank you, Councillor. Moving now to 8.2, the Work Health and Safety Statistical Report. over to management to introduce this.
This report includes the city's safety and wellbeing strategic plan for 2024-2026, which has been reviewed. It's been endorsed by the Strategic Work Health and Safety Committee and the leadership team. It's presented here as a report, and also the statistical data report, which is usually presented at this meeting, is attached.
Thank you. I'll open the item to any questions or comments. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the traffic light monitoring, when there's amber or red ratings, do they trigger, I guess, timely escalation and corrective action? How does that work, please?
So with the amber colour rating, it indicates that the process has been started, and that this is monitored on a regular basis through the year. So we will go out to the responsible people to make sure that they update that information. Where it's not, if it's recorded as red and not started, there's an indication of why it's not started, and sometimes it is reliant on some other action to happen before. But yes, it is. When we go through that review process, it is escalated from there.
And the corrective action as well?
Yes, it is. It is documented in the comments, and you'll see the latest comments that are in red are the corrective actions that have been taken place.
Any further questions? Thank you, Ben.
Thanks for the additional sort of context, and great that you actually have a strategic plan and you have the process to review and have corrective actions, etc. So just a couple of queries. So the plan focuses around psychosocial hazards and general work health and safety improvements. I guess a two-part question: what specific measures will be used to assess the effectiveness of these initiatives? And is there any early trends been observed since implementation?
So since the release of this report, we have finalised the guidelines for psychosocial hazards within the workplace. We have implemented training from an external party across the workplace, and at this point, we have not received any data to say that there are any issues. We have put that information out. We've made it public to our staff, and the training that the staff are undertaking, we're making sure that it is provided to all of our staff, casuals included.
Because obviously there's a large sort of body of work and a number of different sort of initiatives that are housed under. So yeah, I was just interested in how do we measure that those initiatives are giving us the outcomes that we want, and through those sort of early indications, whether there's any gaps in understanding those or just any general themes that may arise.
Just to add to that, prior to starting the piece of work on the psychosocial hazards and the guidelines, the city undertook the People at Work survey, which is a safe work survey. We adopted that. We sent out the questionnaire to all of our staff, and we had an indication of if there were some issues. So we've got a benchmark, so we can then benchmark into survey into the future, the same sort of survey to get some sort of gauge on improvement.
Great, thank you. So it references MyOsh system modules, and they've been incrementally sort of deployed. Is there any current sort of training and adoption gaps? And I guess in terms of timelines for system implementation, how's that sort of looking?
So We have a new work health and safety officer who has come on board, and she has spent a lot of time getting the system up to date. And what we have discovered is that some of the recording, when we're pulling data out of MyOsh, is perhaps lacking. So we have been retraining our staff. We've put out what we're calling the instructional YouTube videos on completing the system, and so that has happened. So we have upskilled our staff in that space, and so we will be looking to implement the hazard module next.
And when's that sort of due?
It will be when unfortunately our officer is on leave at the moment, so when she returns from leave, we'll be looking at that.
Great, thank you. And just last sort of question, in terms of recommendations from any recent work health and safety investigations and audits, is that sort of part of the sort of process to capture those sort of findings, follow those up, etc.? And again, is there any sort of key themes or risks that have been identified as part of that process?
Certainly, one of the I think I mentioned at the last meeting that we had been audited by LGIS, and one of the recommendations was around upskilling our senior management. We have, and that is also part of the strategy as well. We have started on that program, and we have started with some specific topics, such as we've upskilled all of our managers in workers' compensation, what to do in that place and that space. So one of the gaps that was identified in the audit is in the plan, and we're addressing that by having a specific training program for our managers.
Thanks for the additional context. No further questions.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just noted there's several public behaviour incidents. Are there any additional measures being taken to address those, please?
Certainly, this is a very challenging area for our staff, and so we have a training provider who has developed a training course for our front-facing staff, which includes not only our customer service officers, but our depot staff and our rangers and anybody that's out facing customers, I guess, or the community. So we have that ongoing program. In addition, we have, from the psychosocial hazards perspective, we are doing what we're calling a team debrief by an external psychologist, and we're getting the teams together to debrief on any traumatic situations they might have had with members of the public. And whilst the teams do a great job of debriefing on certain situations, it's when you get a build-up of different circumstances, different issues, as it builds up, it can have a lasting impact. So that's the measure that we've started. We've started with 2 teams, and we will continue across all of our customer-facing staff.
So if there are no further questions, I'll put the officer's recommendation. Could I have someone to move that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour? And carried, nil against. So just, great to see that safety and wellbeing strategic plan, so well done. 8.3, the risk management report. Would management care to introduce this item?
Through the chair, so Risk West, who provide risk training here at the city, and have also reviewed our disaster recovery documentation. We've engaged them to undertake a session with our exec leadership team here at the city. So they're going to be reviewing our risk registers in their entirety and running a workshopping session with our exec team to make sure that our risks are being recorded appropriately, that they are an accurate reflection of the key risks here at the city, that we're basically doing everything we should in this sort of area. So they've been engaged. We're just sorting out a date over the next couple of months for them to come in and provide that service here at the city. Otherwise, there's no higher extreme rated operational risks to report back to the committee at this meeting. The strategic risks have been reviewed. Just to draw your attention, SR 28 and SR 25. So they both relate to legislative changes and the risks that they pose to the city. The first one being the risk to the city as a result of changes to the Retirement Villages Act, and the second risk being the risk to the city resulting from the mandatory shift to the state IR system which occurred. So both those risks were reviewed, and a determination was made to reduce the residual risk rating from a medium to a low, and that's simply on the basis that we've done everything we can that we consider is appropriate to mitigate those risks here at the city, and that our lower risk rating actually accurately reflects the risks that they pose to the city. So those have been reviewed and a reduction in the risk. SR2, monitoring of financial ratios. This risk has actually been integrated into SR6, so that's maintaining levels of service of city assets. So it's been listed as a control for that risk now, and the reason being the monitoring of financial ratios isn't in and upon itself a risk to the organisation. The risk to the organisation is our inability to provide essential services to the community, and one control that we instigate to prevent that occurring is the monitoring of financial ratios. So for that reason, we decided to remove SR2 and implement it as a control for SR6. So that's a short summary of the changes to the risk register since the June meeting.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for the update. Just two questions. When strategic risks are revised or integrated, you reference SR2 into SR6. What process ensures all risk owners and relevant staff are informed and that the risk controls remain effective?
Through the chair, yeah. So that sort of review of a risk doesn't occur without dealing with the risk owner themselves. So that occurs with my team and with the risk owners. And so a meeting occurs between my team and with the CEO to regularly review all these risks, and a decision is made that we need to go back and work with the team and determine whether, for example, the controls or the risk rating is right. And so the governance team does that in conjunction with the team that the risk is assigned to.
Great, thank you. The second question is a reference that there's zero operational risks that are currently rated high or extreme, but what ongoing assurance is provided that new or evolving risks, for example, like regulatory changes or major projects, are detected quickly and rated appropriately?
Through the chair, I do note there's I'm not the best at maths, but there's close to 90 operational risks listed within the system. It's just that the teams have made an assessment that the controls they've got in place bring the residual risk rating down to either a medium or a low. For that reason, they aren't reported to this committee based on the terms of reference for the committee. Yep. Yeah, so my team work with the risk owners, but it's really up to them to make. They're the experts in the risks that they face within their teams, and so it's not up to my team to essentially say to them, you know, this is a higher or lower risk. They're the experts in the operations that they conduct on a daily basis. So we work with them. As I said, risk requests are coming in, and we're hoping they can give some guidance as to whether we'll provide them with our complete risk register when they meet with ELT, and so that. Potentially, that is one question that we'll pose to them. Are we accurately reflecting all of our risks to the organisation strategically and operationally? So we'll be very keen to get their view on that as well.
Through you, Madam Chair. The other component to that one, Ben, is the question that you had around sort of like projects and other risks. So part of our project management framework is for any project which is stepping up, there is a risk assessment and a risk register which is undertaken for that, which then goes into the system as well. So for instance, at the moment, Doug and his team are managing some quite big projects, the admin building refurbishment, the aquatic upgrade as well. So those projects have got their own risk registers, which then feed into it. So there's other components as well, in addition to this.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the context. And I guess, yeah, the heart of the question was just around with the risk register being timely, sort of accurate, depending around sort of inputs. And I think, as you mentioned, risk rests sort of coming in, having a process with risk owners, etc. So that was the nature of the query. For me, I suppose similar to other ARC meetings, I find it a bit unusual that there's no risks that are high and above. I'd say, you know, respecting risk owners, accountability, sort of, etc. I'd say there can be a sort of sometimes overestimating the level of sort of controls or having a desire to push risk to a certain level, but that's more of a into the weeds and sort of risk specific sort of query. But yes, that you have that robustness to challenge the process. You have those sort of internal reviews, etc. I guess is a good sign for that the risk process is being used and remains up to date. So yeah, no further questions for me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you've already answered this. My question was around SR2 being merged into SR6. How do we ensure that the financial monitoring still gets the attention it deserves?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the financial monitoring, that takes place through a couple of things. So first off, through our audit process, both internal and external audit. And then, of course, you've got the annual report where we have our financial measures sitting within that. So that then picks up on a lot of the financial measures, reports upon it, so we can then track.
Any further questions? If not, I'll put the officer's recommendation relating to 8.3. Have someone move that, please. Thank you, Ben, and seconded. Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour? Thank you. Nil against. (8.4) The Audit Action Log Progress Report. Over to management.
Through the chair. So in relation to audit actions arising from previously completed audits here at the City, one action remains outstanding from the previous Public Sector Commission Integrity Education Thematic Review. That's on track to be completed by the 31st of December this year. There's two outstanding actions arising from the recent OAG interim financial audit. You'll note they're both marked as complete and ready to be closed off. The major inclusion within the audit log, you'll note, is the recently completed shared services audit that we undertook with the City of Cockburn in relation to our fleet management. So Blue Zoo was selected through the Walga panel. We approached half a dozen auditors on the panel. Blue Zoo were the only ones that responded. They were engaged to conduct a simultaneous audit of Coburn's and the City of Kwinana's processes relating to fleet management. So that's light vehicles and plant operations. So that audit has been completed and the report attached for your review. It's fair to say that from the management comments that we didn't necessarily agree with a number of the findings made by Blue Zoo. We thought perhaps they may have come at this from the angle of a larger business organisation, perhaps even from a mining point of view. We have a lot of processes and procedures in place to mitigate fleet risk here at the City, and we do consider it appropriate, our processes and procedures in this area to minimise the risk. We have cost-effective and safe practices in place, and we think some of the findings within Blue Zoo's audit report are a little bit excessive and onerous for the City to implement. The other aspect here is this was the first time we've attempted a shared service audit with the City of Cockburn. You would have heard me mention at previous meetings. This is something we've been working towards. It's fair to say that it didn't achieve the cost-saving benefits we were hoping. Henceforth, we'll be looking at implementing our own internal audit plan, a 3-year audit plan, and I've commenced drafting that plan, and I'm hoping to present that 3-year internal audit plan to the next meeting of this committee for your review and approval. So we would be looking at implementing that plan utilising external auditors to come in and do that auditing over the next 3 years. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Noting that we've disagreed with most of the recommendations, as I guess a growing council, are we sure that what we have in place is good enough for growth as we get more vehicles online?
Through the chair, while we are growing, we have actually reduced the size of our fleet, particularly our light vehicle fleet. Certainly in the last 8 years that I've been with the city, as we've taken them away from managers, directors and CEO, no longer part of people's packages, and with our heavy fleet, and that this does come out in the comments to the audit. We have done a review of every part of our outside workforce fleet, all the trucks, loader, mowers, and really questioned the need for some of the equipment and the cost to operate some of the equipment, and because of that we have downgraded. So for instance, our 6-wheeler truck, we've now replaced that with a single axle because it was a very big truck for a urban environment. It was certainly appropriate when we were a more rural council, but now it's not appropriate. Going forward, particularly for heavy plant, everything is based on a business case. As an example, we're currently looking at whether or not we bring road sweeping in-house, and the team is working up the business case to look at whether or not that's an appropriate thing to do. And part of that will be working with other local governments on the cost to operate, the cost to maintain that equipment. So it's a very much a structured approach to expanding the fleet.
My second question was just about perception, as you mentioned that the auditors were recommended by WALGA. How would, I guess, even the community, but OAG look upon us disagreeing with most of those recommendations?
I'll answer that one. Through you, Madam Chair. I think when, so the first thing, the first report that we received from Blue Zoo, you could see quite clearly it was written with the wrong context of the organisation which they undertook the audit upon. The benchmarking which they used, the comparisons which they provided were not relevant to a local government context, and particularly one of our size. It's not unusual to have some disagreement with auditors, but this particular one, they really sort of missed the mark in terms of the understanding of the business that they were auditing.
I think just as a follow-up to that question, there was an aspect with respect to it being a WALGA recommended auditor and the perception of us not getting any benefit from that, and perhaps the need to feed that back.
Provide feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Ben?
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I suppose this is a reflection after reading the last sort of report, and appreciate there was an earlier one that provided feedback. I think it's quite a positive that sort of push back around findings that don't add value and you know, don't have supporting context, because there is an opportunity cost of actually saying yes to audit findings when they don't actually demonstrate sort of value. So I think the ability to you know, right size it, make those decisions, provide that feedback, I think is positive. I suppose the negative would be selecting a vendor that maybe doesn't have the appropriate sort of context. So I think you sort of referenced Russell in terms of the internal audit plan sort of going forward, putting that emphasis in the selection criteria around vendors that do have that appropriate sort of government context should form part of that decision making, whether it's part of the awarding of a whole internal audit plan or selection of audits. But just want to, I suppose, reflect as I read through the recommendations for a small fleet sort of size. Some of the very technical solutions didn't seem appropriate. So that was, I suppose, a reflection point around that. Sort of one sort of question. Obviously, there's not many open audit issues, and those have been sort of monitored. And obviously, there's been large amount of emphasis and effort to make sure it's at a manageable level. But once audit actions have been deemed complete as part of the process, is there any particular sort of follow-up sort of processes for those audit actions, just to make sure that they don't reappear in future periods?
Through the chair, ultimately it just depends on what the audit action is, so whether it relates in a new policy or procedure or work instruction, etc., etc. If it's the audit action, for example, might just lead to a one-off action by the city, in which case there wouldn't obviously be any follow-up of that. So sorry to provide a very broad answer to that question, but it really depends on the audit action. I mean, absolutely, if it warrants follow-up, we'll add that in attain as an action that needs to be followed up with the relevant team.
Through you, Madam Chair. What we also do is before any audits are undertaken, particularly external audits, we will pull out previous audit findings, and this is particularly the case around the IT audits, just to make sure that any of the issues which are raised, that we are on top of it. We have undertaken the corrective action, which we said we've completed, but also then looking to see how we've updated it as well.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for the extra context, and I guess baking those audit actions as part of your process going forward will mean that it doesn't reappear, and doing the pre-work ahead of reviews as well is sort of good practice. So yes, thank you. No further questions from me.
Through Madam Chair, just want to clarify that too, though. Even though we do that, one of the things that we do find is that even though we have undertaken action based upon a previous auditor's thing, what we do find is that when the auditors change, their view changes, and therefore the goalposts keep moving. So one of the things that we do is we do clarify what their expectations are prior to them undertaking the audit as well.
Continuous improvement.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We have the officer's recommendation, noting the status of the audit actions and the findings of the internal audit of fleet management audit. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour? Nil against, so that's carried. Could we move now to the council policy review? There's been a lot of work done in this area, so I'd invite management to introduce the item.
Through the chair, so we've decided, because there's 4 finance policies which have been reviewed and are going to be presented to council at an upcoming meeting, we've separated those into a separate report for consideration by the committee. So you'll note that there's, as I mentioned, 4 finance policies: the debtor collection policy, the related party disclosure policy, the recognition and depreciation of assets policy, and the corporate credit card policy. So those have all been updated. They'll be presented to a future meeting of council. In terms of the debtor collection policy, there's only been minor changes to make the policy overall clearer and more consistent, including primarily the procedures relating to the handling of debts here at the city. Related party disclosures, so those amendments, again, are primarily editorial, enhanced clarity, readability, no real changes. Related party disclosures are heavily legislated in terms of our requirements, so we didn't see any major reason to overhaul that policy in this instance. Depreciation of assets policy, we've updated to clarify the management of portable and attractive assets primarily. We've revised the useful lives and re-evaluation cycles. We've required annual fair value assessments against the valuation thresholds. And then in relation to the the corporate credit card policy, so we've updated again for clarity and accountability. the process related to the approval of the CEO's credit card has been updated to reflect industry practice. So, based on recent OAG audit findings, the CFO will now approve the CEO's credit card purchases. And there's also been some restrictions on website links to avoid potential for fraud. Those are the primary changes to those policies.
Thank you. So we'll take questions in order. First, against the debtor collection policy. Any questions or comments on that policy? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. With the changes to the policy, how will the impact on overdue debt recovery and potential write-offs be measured and reported to the committee?
Through you, Madam Chair, our outstanding debtors is actually reported as part of our monthly financial report, which goes to council.
Thank you. And is there a mechanism to report it through to this committee also?
Through you, Madam Chair. I mean, I guess we could, but is that going to be, in terms of the timeliness, because we're reporting it monthly to council, I'm just wondering what the benefit's going to be in terms of taking it through.
Yeah, policy. It wasn't particularly a leading question as it should be. I was just wondering, obviously, if there's sort of any impacts from an audit risk perspective. I guess presumably there would be a mechanism to ultimately report it back in, as opposed to a standing item, for instance.
Yeah, I think if there was any risks from it, then that would be reported separately. But in terms of management of it, it's certainly there's a lot of oversight.
Just one query: the special payments arrangements for debtors in payment difficulty, is that just been introduced as part of this policy, or has that been there for a while?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, that's been in existence for a long time. So we've got a hardship policy, and then there's other arrangements before it gets to a hardship policy as well.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. No further questions for me.
Any questions on the related party disclosure policy? The recognition and depreciation of assets policy? Thank you, Ben.
For the updated policy, how will the city verify that the new revaluation and asset management requirements are implemented in day-to-day operations?
Through the chair, so you might remember, I think it was 2 financial audits ago, we had a finding related, and it was related to restatement of the previous financial year accounts related to asset valuations. So in response to that finding, we did have to document the process. We had to bring 2 teams together because it was crossing over 2 teams, and then ensure our process ensured, the issue was we weren't getting the data, ensured that we would get the data. So right down to the nuts and bolts, we now hold finances over, or a clearance over the developer. It's part of the QA for a developer to get signed off for their road construction, that we get all the QA documents. So it's a requirement that we get them, and that includes the asset data required so that we can enter it into the asset register. We also had a look at the date that we recognise an asset, because there's a lag between finishing a construction and titles being created, which is in effect the date in which we become responsible for the asset. We actually recognise that 2 months later, and that actually the holding up of clearances, holding bonds, and that later recognition has addressed the problem of having prior year restatements. And then to capture all that, we have a document. So this policy that we're looking at, behind that is a guideline that details our whole valuation process, including recognition of assets and how we do it, and we've documented those changes within that guideline.
Yeah, thanks very much, because yeah, exactly, I suppose what I was sort of asking for, because it's not just a revaluation now. At a point in time, it's predicated around early inputs and capture that information. So if it's baked in the process and supporting documentation, then that's great. So, yeah, no further questions for me.
Mine's more just a statement that I welcome the change that places the oversight with the CFO, which is consistent with the OAG advice, and I think this strengthens our governance and transparency. Thank you.
Ben?
Thank you. Just a question sort of noting that sort of change. What's the current monitoring and reporting mechanisms that for this sort of process?
Through you, Madam Chair. So credit cards are reported monthly as well, along with all our accounts payable through to council. So it shows all the transactions which have gone against each credit card. We don't have a lot of credit cards within the city. So we sort of tightly manage that, and so only people which require them. And then, of course, there's a process for sign-off of expenditure, and then that gets reported through to council monthly.
Thank you. Because I suppose the CFO signing off is per OAG sort of advice, but the reality is it's still you're getting a person that reports you to approve it. So having that visibility and transparency of the transactional detail is a key thing in terms of visibility, etc. So that's great. Cool. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. So if there are no further questions, the recommendation is that this committee adopt all 4 policies that we've discussed this evening. Can I move that from the chair and have a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Winmar. All those in favour? Nil against. The motion's carried. Is there any late or urgent business? No. And there were no answers to questions which were taken unnoticed. So before I close the meeting, I would like to thank Ben Arnold for his amazing contribution to this committee over the last few years. Your questions are always insightful and respectfully made, but useful. So thank you very much, Ben, and wish you all the best for the future. I'd now like to close the meeting. Thank you.